how do we actually create a world in which our shared humanity becomes real? A world where everyone can belong.
Very much in our lives, we're invited to watch or listen instead of witnessing or doing.
How do we make sure that when someone takes a photo, they see themselves?
We have a role and requirement to do right by the communities that we come from.
We know that the starting point is uneven, but we can generate equitable outcomes and give everybody a level playing field.
If we are producing products and services that are for everyone, we need to look at ourselves and we need to see our users in ourselves.
What we're trying to create is a culture where literally everyone can reach their full potential.
It feels nice not to be like, oh, she's a special kid. We gotta do everything different just for her.
Who is that, Owen? Who is that? That's you!
By making our products more accessible, we're enabling people to learn more, to accomplish more in their lives.
I have a custom voice model now. Take a selfie.
Being able to set somebody on a better path in their life, I can't put in the words the satisfaction you get from something like that.
The safest thing for a blind person to do is to sit still. I ain't sitting still.
No matter what background you are, your experiences, at the core of it is your heart and your soul.
Let's try it out and see how it goes.
Let's do this.
This is only the tip of the iceberg. We'll learn lessons which we can then combine to build something that really works for everyone.
To understand and be understood, the episode I really remember.
Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra Garcia. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion lead at Google.
Hi everyone, I'm Steph Boudreau. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the product inclusion lead for Google Workspace.
We really hope you enjoyed that video. It's actually hot off the presses. We launched it last month on Google's Belonging site, and it showcases Google's commitment to building belonging in the workplace, our products, and society. And it just gives us the warm and fuzzies. In this session, we're going to discuss how startups can build their companies with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion right from the start. And we're going to share some practical actions you can take and implement at your companies starting today. Before we get into the actions, it's important to note that DEI is not a checklist, and therefore never one and done. DEI is change management and requires intentional, strategic, and consistent effort to drive change and transformation. Steph and I are just happy to be here with you today and help you along this important journey. Now, when we start, the question we get the most frequently asked by startups is, well, where do we even start? DEI is hard. A strong place to start, it's not very much rocket science, is to have an open, transparent, and real conversation with your team, with your colleagues, with your founders, about what diversity, equity, and inclusion actually is. Have you taken the time to define these three terms and what they mean? Speak openly about it. Ask questions. Explain these in a conversation and ask your colleagues, like, what do they mean to them? It's also important to just acknowledge the problems that you see being faced by your communities, societies, and the globe. Carefully listen to your teammates' experience and get feedback from them. Everyone's feedback is critical to building inclusion. So after this, we encourage you to seek alignment with your team on how you should approach the DEI work. Steph and I hear this all the time, like, oh, we want a list, we want to take action now. But actually having alignment as to how you approach DEI work is just as critical. And we encourage you to see it as you would tackle any business challenge. We know that diverse teams drive better results and financial performance. And thus we're treating it as a business challenge actually helps drive accountability and transparency. Have clear OKRs on DEI just as you would have OKRs on the business. Everyone's responsibility to drive this OKR, but have a dedicated person to just drive that accountability for your plans and have ongoing reviews to track KPIs just as you would any business review that you have on an ongoing basis. We love frameworks, right? So we want to provide a simple framework to how you can start thinking about DEI strategies. And it's called the 3 Ps: people, process, and products. I'm going to walk you through the first two P's, people and process, and my teammate Steph will walk you through product. All right, so let's start with people. The two areas that people think of when they think of this pillar is hiring. How do I hire for a representative employee base? And culture. How do I build an inclusive culture? So let's start with hiring. When it comes to hiring, you can actually tweak simple things in the hiring process to attract and hire more diverse and representative talent. Let's start with something as simple as a job description for the job postings that you have open. Job descriptions are likely the first thing your future employees will read about your startup and may contain subtle messages about what your startup values. We know that there's certain terms that prevent women or underrepresented groups from applying. So make sure you audit these and use inclusive language. There's a ton of tools online that help you identify what these inclusive terms are. Another lever to consider is changing the minimum qualifications for the job. Stats show that men apply for a job when they only meet about 60% of the qualifications, but women only apply when they meet 100% of the qualifications. Think of all those people that you're not including in this process. Separate the minimum and preferred qualifications and keep your minimum requirements real. And lastly, another action you can take in hiring is we really encourage you to expand outreach for candidates beyond your network. We know we all fall into our immediate networks and our personal biases to tap into friends or family. So promoting your openings to networks outside of your immediate pool actually builds a more representative pipeline. Now, the other area that I mentioned in the people pillar is culture. What is this all about? And how do you create an inclusive workspace? Creating an inclusive culture is actually really hard and it takes time, but you're right at the start of your businesses, so this is actually perfect timing to do so. There's small actions you could take on a daily basis that will build belonging and inclusion through time. I'll give you some examples of what these can be. First, talk openly about DEI with your colleagues and acknowledge the current state of DEI. An example of this could be to provide a safe space and honest exchanges about anti-racism, resources around anti-racism, and what you as a founder or CEO are learning along the way. Learn about your teammates beyond their work persona. Don't assume who they are and ask questions. Encouraging active listening in team meetings and participation from others. A simple gesture, especially in this hybrid world, like asking someone's opinion, ensures everyone's voice is heard and builds inclusion in simple team meetings. Lastly, acknowledge cultural holidays like Juneteenth, National Coming Out Day, Hispanic Heritage Month, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and even months like Mental Health Awareness Month. All of these, speaking openly about these, creates sense of belonging for everyone. Assigning someone to, again, just be that DEI champion, it's everyone's responsibility, but one person just to help the team navigate and drive accountability on these inclusive practices goes a really long way. Now I'm going to talk about the second P in our framework, which is process. And process refers to the way you run your business, from infrastructure to your systems and operations. And when it comes to process, here is where tone at the top is critical. So we're looking at you, founders and CEOs. You play a critical role in demonstrating commitment to DEI and driving these values forward as how the company is run. A great place to start is to meet with your team and craft a purpose statement that encapsulates DEI values. Now remember, the mission and the purpose statements are completely different. A mission statement is what you do, and a purpose statement is the why you do it. Purpose is all about our shared values. A strong set of values on a purpose statement gets shared with the team. It helps bring that unity. It helps bring people together for something that is bigger than the business goal or target that you're trying to hit. Another great idea that I just mentioned is how to build a DEI OKR. Now, these can be very, very simple, like improving representation on your team, or everyone committing to continuous education on DEI topics. For example, at Google, we're working to improve Black plus representation at senior levels and committed to a goal to improve leadership representation of underrepresented groups by 30% by 2025. That is a very specific, tangible, measurable goal that can help your team advance representation. Overall, just evaluate all the aspects as to how you're running your business, from meetings to quarterly reviews to OKR setting, and think of where you can embed DEI and inclusive practices. Steph, I'm going to pass it over to you to cover the last, but very important, last P, product.
Thanks, Alex. You may be wondering why it's important for a startup to even think about building with inclusion when you're still looking for market fit or trying to flesh out an idea. Well, if you're clear on who you are or not designing for, you may be able to find an area that you hadn't originally considered. When thinking about building products and features, we look at 13 dimensions of diversity. It includes groups such as age, race, socioeconomic status, physical attributes, languages, and more. We also think about building products that address intersectionality. I identify as a woman and a mother. However, I'm not a woman on Tuesday and a mother on Wednesday. I'm always both. We are all multifaceted, and so we should think about intersectionality as the things that make users who they are. Product inclusion does not live within one person or one team. Everyone has a part to own. There are 4 different points in the process where you need to ask, who else? And make sure voices at the margins are brought to the center. The 4 areas or points in the product lifecycle we've identified are ideation, user research, testing, and marketing. These disproportionately helped teams launch more inclusive and equitable products. Ideation involves bringing in diverse perspectives to ensure you aren't just building for yourself or those like you. This is especially crucial for homogeneous teams that may not have diversity across gender, age, disability, ethnicity. Look around the room. Who's missing? Whose voice isn't here? This will be a little more obvious in a small group, such as a startup. Also, what possible bias have we created with this group of people? Be open about who you are building for and who you aren't. This goes back to what Alex mentioned. When we have these open conversations within our teams, we're able to identify all of these things. User research is the first inflection point where you can get to the core of what the user needs are and what challenges you are trying to solve. This often involves getting out of Silicon Valley, learning about how people use technology and what gaps there are. Make sure that you're being thoughtful about who's a part of the research and their needs. Once the product or service is created, testing involves getting feedback from a myriad of potential users from all walks of life. By stress testing, users may be able to break your product or find challenges and opportunities that the team had not thought of. Breaks may seem like a boulder or something that you can't do, but view it as an opportunity to build better. And remember that edge cases, which it might seem like, are rarely edge cases. They're opportunities to make your product more usable for others, not just a small group. Lastly, it's important to consider whose voice is being represented with your marketing. Are you avoiding perpetual stereotypes about marginalized users? How are you attracting new and unrepresented audiences and user journeys? A great example is the work that has been done by the Google Meet team to make video calls more equitable. The goal was to improve image quality for stationary video calls in backlit scenarios. Through feedback from a diverse group of testers, the team was able to determine which algorithm was more robust and worked for all individuals across the skin tone spectrum. This ensured that all video calls on Google Meet work well for everyone. Meet Light Enhancement is an AI feature that automatically detects when a user appears underexposed and enhances the brightness to improve their visibility irrespective of their skin tone. The AI algorithm has been tuned to ensure people with darker skin tones are illuminated in video chats and people with lighter skin tones are lit up. I know we've talked about a lot today, and you can learn more about what we've discussed here through a few different Google resources. As Alex mentioned, Google's Belonging site has a wealth of information. It's a great place to start, especially if you're not sure where to begin. It gives guidance on how to build an inclusive culture and product development and so many other things. It will review a lot of what we discussed here today. You can also take a look at Google's Diversity Annual Report to get a sense of what we as Google are working towards. And lastly, you can learn ways to bring inclusion and equity into product marketing through our Inclusive Marketing Toolkit. Thanks for listening, and we hope you've left with some steps to build equity and belonging into your ideas and organization.